the thing that theater is so good about is promoting a shared humanity. And as Jesse said, enabling you to see yourself in other characters who are not you.
Hi, everyone. This is a special Tony Awards edition of The Awardist, and I am joined by 5 incredible Tony nominees: Sutton Foster, Jesse Williams, Tracy Letts, Michael R. Jackson, and Camille A. Brown. Welcome, everybody. What does this nomination, whether it is your 7th or your 1st, mean to you? Sutton, you are the record holder here, so why don't you start?
Well, I mean, it means a lot. It especially now, coming back after 2 years where theater wasn't existing, and now it's thriving, and people are back. And but honestly, just being able to be in a show on Broadway right now is an award in itself. And so being nominated and recognized for it is awesome. It's great. It's like the cherry and the whipped cream on top.
This is my first everything. So for me, it's tremendously surreal, and it really represents, I think, a continuation of what I've been experiencing as a really wonderful, warm welcome from the theater community. It's pretty wonderful just to be rubbing shoulders with you all.
Camille, you've been nominated before for choreography, but this is your directorial debut, and therefore your first nomination in that category. Is that an extra gratification?
I mean, no pressure, Broadway debut, right? So, I mean, I feel extremely honored. When I was first asked to direct and choreograph, I was so scared. I mean, the stakes were high. It's my Broadway debut. And so to feel one extreme of this terror about doing it on this kind of platform, and then being acknowledged with a nomination for both my direction and my choreography is just amazing. And I'm so honored and really, really grateful. And it's been 67 years since a Black woman has directed and choreographed on Broadway. So it's expansive in terms of what this moment means for me. The first one was Katherine Dunham.
Tracy and Michael, you have both won Pulitzers for your work. Michael, for your nominated work, Tracy in the past. Does having that on your shelf add or take away pressure from your new work or moving forward in this moment?
No, I don't think it takes away from it. The Tony Award is a theater award specifically. It's one that's like that comes from the theater community, and so that means a lot to me, particularly for my show, which is such an unlikely, I guess, entry into being celebrated by that community, some might say. And so I feel really honored that, all the hours and the blood, sweat, and tears and the time that I spent, with my team and also alone, just working on this particular piece is being received in this way.
Yeah, there's I feel no pressure, no extra pressure. The fact that we're even here, I mean, this is the culmination for all of us, I'm sure, years of work to get a show to Broadway. And then, of course, the delay we've had because of the pandemic, just to be up on Broadway feels like we're winning. And then to be nominated and invited to the party is just great. So no, there's feeling no pressure at all. It's all fun.
Well, some of you are nominated for new work and others for revivals. Would you say there are unique challenges to each? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, I definitely think being nominated for a new piece can be challenging in some ways because people don't know what they're getting, especially with a musical. Like, they're used to hearing a song that they know. And so a lot of people have to really get to know a Strange Loop and my work and decide for themselves how they feel about it. But on the other hand, people get to know a new piece and get to fall in love with it or be critical of it or however they feel about it. And there's something exciting to me about that.
I feel like everyone knows the Music Man or has done it in their high school or has lots of thoughts about it or how it should be done or how it, And so I was very intimidated, and all of that noise was just not helpful. And so I had to sort of put blinders on and kind of just go back to the text and interpret it the way I saw it. And luckily I was working with incredible creatives who were willing to sort of break it open and didn't have a lane they were trying to go down. And so that I as long as I feel like I'm with a team, a collaborative team that allows the opportunity for exploration, I feel like you can really dive into these works and honor obviously what is written on the page and what the Meredith Willson wrote, but sort of find your own way with it.
Camille, what was it like for you jumping into a revival versus choreographing and directing a new work?
And the Jacques Changues for Color Girls is beloved by Black women, by Black people. And even though it's been 40 years since it's been on Broadway, it's been a movie, it's been countless iterations of it. So I first had to get out of my own way because there was a fear of, well, what am I going to contribute to it? There have been so many people that have done this before me. What am I going to say? And I just had to remove that and go, Camille, just enter it the way that you see the poems and just dive into it and speak your truth in it. So that was the challenge, was getting out of my own way and the pressure of trying to do something that is as pivotal as for Color Girls. But like my friend tells me, it's an offering. What I have to this to contribute is an offering to the legacy piece.
To work on a new work as a playwright is, I mean, you're making something where something wasn't there before. So there's a real process of invention that happens before we get in the rehearsal room. But once we're in the rehearsal room, I think you approach, as Sutton was saying, you kind of approach them the same way. You start on page one and say, what's the play about? What are we trying to do? Who's this person? What do they want? It doesn't matter if it's a revival or if it's a new play. You have to start from scratch.
Jesse, did you find it comforting or intimidating that you were making your stage debut in a revival?
I think I initially did find it a touch, and I anticipated feeling intimidated. Like, oh, well, this is already won Best Play. This is already Holly's nominations. Is there going to be an expectation? That's not really a useful line of thinking. So let me shift gears into how I can crack this thing open and what does it mean?
Well, Jesse and Michael, these are your Broadway debuts. And as I said, Camille, it's your directorial debut on Broadway. For all of you, what has that newness and that being sort of the ingenue, as it were, here been like? I mean, were there mentors or people you found really essential in this process along the way?
Yes, countless mentors, and my friends and my family had to remind me over and over again that, Camille, this is, you've been directing and choreographing for over 15 years with your own company. Yes, this is a different arena and you're going to experience new challenges and learn a lot, but just in terms of directing and choreographing isn't new. So I really had to lean into that and really listen to them. And they really provided guidance throughout the process. So I was able to see and trust my instincts and trust the things that I did know and be open to the things that I didn't know and learn very fast.
It was mostly just having my company and my producers, who my producer was like a very experienced Broadway producer, and like my director had been on Broadway before, and we all were really working together toward the same goal. So I just sort of leaned toward them to help guide me through this process, and they, definitely held me up during it. So I feel, again, grateful to just have a company of people around me who can sort of, lift me up.
Yeah, I had certainly some folks in mentorship roles in my life. We also had this start-stop because we started this process right before COVID. We were in week 2 of rehearsals. I'd already moved back out to New York when everything got shut down. So had this kind of false start, but it did allow us to begin relationships and in-person dynamics. And I really leaned on our director, Scott Ellis, a lot for just kind of the rules of the road and permission and trusting myself and process. And though the stage was new to me, storytelling wasn't, and just run it and find the truth through repetition and learn that, repetition isn't a prison. It actually is a channel for liberation. It is the freedom of being able to really shine a light into every little crack and crevice of the material, as opposed to TV and film, right? Where you're going to say it one day and you'll never say those lines ever again in your life.
I'm a mom now. And so, and I think too, there's something, I don't know. It's a combination of a lot of things. I think it's coming back after 2 years. I think it's being 47. I think it's having a 5-year-old child who lives in my house, who I'm a mom to. But it's like I just have maybe a different appreciation, or everything just feels more joyful. I have more balance. You know, I feel like I love what I do. I love my job, but I don't know. I think I think that's the thing I've learned, is that I just I don't take any of it for granted.
I don't know anything. I don't know anything. And every time I'm out there, I feel like, how the hell have I ever done this before? I'm trying to figure it out from scratch. I mean, obviously, you bring a lot of experience on stage, life experience to bear, but I always feel like I have to sort of learn it from scratch. And this is an odd example of this, because I've never acted in a play that I wrote before this, before the minutes, and so there's a kind of, I don't know, there's a weird bifurcated brain thing that's taking place, where I'm in the show, I'm playing the show, but I'm also very aware of the show as the writer of the show, kind of a player manager or something. It's a very odd position to be in. I've never been in it before.
A Strange Loop, For Colored Girls, and Take Me Out are all plays that interrogate race, sexuality, identity. So for Michael, Camille, and Jesse, do you feel like Broadway is a friendly place to be having those conversations? I mean, we throw around words like diversity and inclusion, but is that something the theatrical community is getting better at?
I think we'll see. I think we have to continue to challenge the system. I think Broadway has seen 7 playwrights on Broadway represented, and that's absolutely amazing. And my question is, and now what? And now what? And now what? How do we continue that conversation? How do we get more people that have diverse and dimensional stories to speak and to be alive? And how do we bring in more audiences? How do we bring in more Black audiences? We have Black theater nights. How do we turn that into Black theater weeks, Black theater month, the whole season? You know, how do we continue to keep challenging the system to challenge the system?
My perspective on this is, sometimes a little cranky, sometimes a little nuanced, sometimes just, I don't know, sometimes I'm like, why are you asking me this question? I'd have lots of thoughts about it. And I guess where I'd land on it is, I think it's all completely subjective. It depends on the eye of the beholder, because there could be 41 Black plays in all the theaters and that wouldn't be enough. Or there could be 3 amazing plays in 3 Broadway theaters, and that would be incredible. I feel like if you don't talk about the sort of what's on Broadway and not just who's on Broadway, that thinking about this along racial terms for me is very difficult. But that's just my perspective on it. It has to be about what we're doing, and what and how do audiences receive that, and what are the conversations that come from that sort of relationship from artistic output and audience reception, and all the things that sort of drive that. And I sort of definitely, as a Black writer, I'm hungering for much more conversations about what I'm doing, what I'm writing, what I'm saying, what my collaborators are doing, what is the quality of our artistic output. For me, it's not enough to just say, he's here. Who cares? I don't care that I'm here. I care that that I wrote a good musical and that people like it, or they don't like it, and they can tell you why.
I do think that one of the interesting things to behold is, it's really not a question for Black creatives as much as it is for audiences, and particularly white audiences. Every other racial demographic has demonstrated throughout time a willingness and a readiness to find themselves in other characters that look different from them. We grow up on it. We're reared by seeing ourselves in other bodies, and only the white world is the only universe that not only like doesn't hide their refusal to do that often, and fighting back and resisting. Why I can't? That's not for me. That's somebody else's work. That's a Black thing. Why is that character Black? Freaking out on social media and all these things because they don't see themselves. There's only that's so it's really about it's a challenge to audiences to grow and blossom and accept and realize that the world's not going to explode if the lead is a Black woman instead. She's still a person. She still has feelings. She still was a child. She still has a mother. It's nothing changed. But this is all a process, and I'm entirely optimistic about that. It's hard to unlearn from these experiences. So exposure and representation means everything.
And can I just piggyback on that, just because it's something I feel very passionately about? Because I've also caught the sort of mirror opposite of that as well, wherein, particularly in my show, where there are those who feel upset or feel some kind of way about the fact that there could be somebody who's not Black or queer who sees himself in the show that I've written. And I feel that, to me, that's important as well, is that like that the humanity, the thing that theater is so good about is promoting a shared humanity. And as Jesse said, enabling you to see yourself in other characters who are not you. And what I've learned sort of working on my piece in particular is that for some people, my show is a mirror. And for other people, it's a window. And that hope people can sit together in the same space and see the same story, which is very specifically about a young Black gay man, but like they can find something in his experience of being a human being that speaks to them no matter where they come from. And that's been like very radicalizing to me, because we live in such a divisive world, or a world that seems so divisive. And theater is a unique institution that is live and in person with people breathing the same air, that you can come together in a shared space and you can watch a story and it can inspire a sense of empathy among you, with your neighbor, with people on stage, with characters, all of those things. And that's like the beauty of theater, in my view. I remember going to see Death of a Salesman when I was 19 years old with Brian Dennehy. And I am not an old white man in the 1950s. And I can tell you that I cried my little eyes out at the end, because whatever they were doing in that production, they touched into a sense of humanity that it didn't matter where I came from. I could see into the pathos and the sort of tragedy of his story. And that was something that inspired me to want to try to write stories that would do that for people from my community who maybe weren't from me, but also for people for my community. So again, this mirror window concept for me is very important, particularly in the arts world, because there's so few things that promote that kind of shared experience. And I think it's very important.
Tracy, I think the Minutes is in conversation with these things we're talking about in a sort of strange parallel fashion. And I'm curious just like what first sent you off on that path of writing this play about sort of quiet complicity or the things we don't say out loud.
The original impulse to write the Minutes, I think the first idea I had about writing the Minutes was I was watching an old Frankenstein movie, and I was struck by the character of the villagers. The villagers always presents as a single character, the unified mob with pitchforks and torches. And I got to thinking about, well, did they have a meeting, the villagers, before they decided to go out and kill the monster? Was there any dissent? Was there anybody among the villagers saying, I don't think we should go out and kill the monster? There's sort of the jumping off point for me, but I see what is happening in our culture in terms of a desire to really entrench a version of history which is legend and not, in fact, our actual history. And in the time since I've written the play, when I first wrote it in 2016, it's become much, much worse, much more strident opposition to examining the actual history of this country, genocide that took place in this country. And until we deal with the infection in this country, we can't really clean the wound. And the minutes provided an opportunity for me to look at the moment where we go, the tipping point where we move from our quaint small town democracy to something much scarier, uh, something much more diabolical, which I think unfortunately, the play has become just more true since I wrote it over the last 6 years.
The journey of A Strange Loop from when you first started writing it to it now being on Broadway is really extraordinary, and then getting these record 13 nominations. So can you just
11.
11, sorry. I'm giving you more than you got. Could you walk us through like the Cliff Notes version of that, and like all of the hard work it took to get here and tell this story?
I graduated from undergrad in 2002, 2003. I had a BFA degree, which I had no idea how to use to get a real job. At that time, America was about to go to war with Iraq. I was living in an old lady's house, in a bungalow-style house on the second floor, not knowing what I was going to do with my life. And so I started writing a monologue called Why I Can't Get Work. And that became the sort of basis for this musical that was just about a young Black gay man wandering around New York, wondering why life was so terrible. And it was just, for me, an attempt at that time to sort of capture in real time a sense of young Black gay alienation, sort of in a jar, like a butterfly or something. I went to musical theater writing school at NYU, and I began writing songs, and those songs then started to speak to the monologue, more Black gay alienation. That was like my brand. That turned the piece into a one-man show that I performed at Ars Nova in 2006. And then like 20 people showed up. 2 people walked out in the middle. I realized I wanted to create a musical, that's something that was not like a cabaret act. So I started working with a theater company that turned it into more of a conceptual musical theater piece. I did many readings after that. Stephen Brackett approached me in 2012 about doing a reading of the show with the musical, or I approached him about doing a musical, a full reading of it, because I'd only had ever done either songs or the show itself or the book reading. Then we did a concert, or we did a version of it with the whole cast being Black and queer. That changed it sort of forever, because it's not what it had been before. Then Shakina Nathan approached in 2015. We did a reading there. Then we did a concert version of 54 Below in 2016. Then Playwrights Horizon said that they wanted to see it, so we did a reading for them in 2016, 4 days after Trump was elected. That then sort of blew everything up as well. And then my producer came on board when nobody would produce it, and he and Page 73 Productions decided to team up. We did an industry reading like 9 months later. Then in 2018, Playwrights Horizons put a bid on the show and said they would do it. Then a year later in 2019, we did the show. And so that was 16 years of my life, just going on and off, going back to this like musical that began with me literally just trying to sort of save my own life.
Sutton, you have originated some amazing roles, and you've also brought to life like iconic parts like Reno Sweeney. Where was Marion in the pantheon of great Broadway parts for you?
It wasn't even on the list. For me, the parts that I would play, honestly, I didn't even think about it. When they first approached me about 3 years ago to play her, and my first response was, what? Why? Like, I didn't understand. It didn't make any sense to me. I could probably cast like 20 other people before I would get to me, but I think that was also why she was intriguing, was that she was sort of not in my wheelhouse, you know. She was sort of a left turn. So I took it sort of as a challenge.
Well, I was going to say, like, I saw the show a couple weeks ago, and I loved how you've made her into something more interesting than a standard mid-century ingenue, and just wondered if that was something you were like really intent on from the word go.
I wasn't necessarily intent on anything. Like I go back to like what Tracy was saying. I was kind of like, I knew nothing. I went in I was like, I had no preconceived notions of how she was going to unfold. In fact, I was pretty confident I would be fired. I just really didn't know how it was going to turn out. So I just sort of took it day to day and kind of discovered it along the way. I wasn't really aiming to for anything. I had no idea. But I think that blank canvas was and the sort of openness to discovery was very helpful, useful for me.
For everyone, what is the thing in your show that the audience response to has surprised you the most?
I didn't know what to expect. I mean, the show has been done a lot of times, so you know that there's certain things that people respond to and love. The thing that I can say is that I so look forward to people's responses to Somebody Almost Walked Off with All of My Stuff. It's performed by Oakley, and I just can't wait for that moment every time. And all of the women throughout the whole show have these major moments. It's 7 women that I just live for. So they're not really surprises, but I just love watching them and watching them live and discover each night through the poems.
I have found they're really interesting, and I'll try to carefully not say too much for those who haven't seen the play yet. There are really interesting parallels between characters. The several characters kind of have mirror other characters throughout the play, and I say that because it's interesting to watch who the audience empathizes with or finds to be or derides. Sometimes there are slurs, there are epithets that are funny, but the same word is said differently later, and it's horrendous. There's moans, there's groans, it's painful. It's a really interesting kind of play with the power of language, and how we rank nomenclature. Like what is offensive? It's almost a tier system of we all have our own tier system of what is way too old, way it's over the line, or what's kind of a comic foible. And it's really interesting day in and day out to watch audiences kind of play ping pong with that. And this half of the room, this person up front, somebody's absolutely disgusted by something that is hilarious to somebody 10 rows back. And nobody's right or wrong. I'm not judging it. It's just really sincerely interesting to watch that we are all different, and we all come with a different set of ingredients when we receive these experiences, and we have characters that say essentially the same thing about their philosophy or their perspective on life at different stages in the experience, and we receive it totally differently.
There's a moment in my show where the audience is invited to clap along to a song. And every night, ever since we've ever done it, I'm always so excited to see who starts clapping right away, who doesn't clap at all, who starts clapping right away and then stops in the middle of it, who keeps going the whole time through, who's turning to their neighbor to have a judgment about what their neighbor's doing, who doesn't, and just watching, because that for me causes another sort of loop within the story of A Strange Loop that feeds the whole moment itself and only further tells Usher's story, Usher the protagonist. And I always am so excited by all the many reactions that are happening, because sort of thematically that is sort of exactly where Usher is trying to put everybody in that moment of having to make a choice and having to decide for themselves how they feel about something that they're seeing in front of them, which is for him exactly what his whole life is like. That it's how do I feel about am I seeing around me and what's being said to me, and often at my own expense, and sometimes even from myself.
Do you hold your breath to see if they clap on 1 on 3 or 2 and 4?
No, because I always know if they're gonna clap in the right spot, because that we lead it in a real way, and it always stays. Listen, I'm no fool. I know how to make people clap on the 2 and the 3. So
create rhythm.
Yes. It's the Harry Connick Jr. in me.
There's a moment in the minutes, there's a moment late in the show where there's a shift, where the play moves from a a lighter comedy to something more sinister and more indicting, really, of the audience. And I guess I'm surprised for just how much the audience is willing to go along with that and engage in that discussion, and how much they really want to be involved in that discussion about, and it's an indictment of everybody in the theater, really, myself included. It doesn't really let anybody off the hook. And I'm always curious to see, to hear them go along with it. And then, of course, I'm also always curious to witness those few people who won't go along with it and who are, in fact, enraged by it. We've gotten some very angry responses, very angry. People who don't want to examine their history, or don't want to, they won't go along with it. Also, what we hear a lot is, I didn't get it. And then you ask a couple of questions. You say, well, did you see this happen? Yeah. Did you see this happen? Yeah. Well, then you got it. Maybe you didn't like it. I mean, all right. But I think you got it.
I wasn't anticipating the audience being so excited from the get-go. Like that, I've never had that experience where before we even did anything, so then it's about, we have to make sure we like own up to like this like expectation, but the audiences are going crazy as soon as the overture starts. And so there is like, okay, all right, we have to like deliver something. But that I just never, every night I'm sort of blown away by that.
Well, on sort of the flip side of this coin, I mean, no one can control how an audience will respond to your work. And that creates some really interesting things. I mean, Sutton people have, of course, had lots of opinions about the My White Knight keychain. Camille, you guys are closing earlier than you anticipated. Tracy, as you said, you wrote this play in one political climate and now are premiering on Broadway in another. Jesse, just this week, an audience member violated the social contract of your show and posted legal images that they took during a performance. And Michael, there's been this really weird feedback of like, well, it's not for me, but I like it, where I'm like, why isn't it for you? But in all of those cases, like, how do you roll with those punches or the weird things that come up out of the audience and the world's reaction to the work that are maybe things you could never have predicted or anticipated?
As long as I felt true, the minute I started trying to please other people or try to do what I thought people wanted, it was gonna be a disaster. So for me, it was about finding my own voice. And honestly, like, those people's opinions about it are kind of none of my business.
Can I cuss?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Damn, I wish you asked that earlier.
Maybe taking the words out of my mouth. I'm curious to know what this is going to be.
No, I just kind of feel like, like, everybody. Like, I don't go.
Yeah, no,
you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Because, like, and I don't say that from like an arrogant place. I just mean trying to do anything together is hard. It's funny because I actually, have some sort of like masochistic tendencies where I read all the comments.
Oh no!
And like, why? And so I literally, because the reason. No, listen. It's because I'm obsessed with understanding how people think about things. I don't care like what they think, but like how. But the thing that I learned, like the longer I like spent on like all that chat. That like it was just sucking. It was like, I know I'm like a bottom feeder for like the worst kind of commentary. And so like I was like, but the longer I spent on there with people like talking about me, like the longer I was like, it wasn't even the how of what their thoughts were wasn't like intellectually interesting to me. And so I had to like decide to like, just like you said, Sutton, it's none of my business. And I've also been that person for many years. Oh God, I was like I could out talk a Broadway world person under the table like 10 years ago. And I've had to learn, and I had That was me. It was me. I was like, I was theater lover 2759, you know?
Oh.
And I actually regret that. And but I also had learned that like you can do that, or you can sit together with people and try to do something hard.
I'll tell you a story. Amy Morton, when she was doing August Osage County, she told me the story that invariably she would go out and do a show and do a Wednesday mat, and the audience would be very quiet, and she would get angry. She would feel real contempt for the audience because she wasn't getting back feedback she was used to, and she would come off stage and she would say, "These people, these I've had it with this. What a terrible audience." And she said, invariably, every time she felt that way, she would walk out the stage door, and there would be a couple of teenage kids with programs, crying, "You've changed my life." It's just a reminder that yes, there's shit talkers, yes, there's dip everywhere you look, but what we do touches people. Every show, every performance touches somebody out there, and so you just have to try to focus on the work that you're doing with your fellow artists and reach the people that you can reach. And if they're not up for the conversation, good luck to you.
This internet age, the social media stuff now, we're the guinea pig generation of this, a feedback loop that is, objects in the mirror appear much larger than they are, right? It always seems louder and bigger, and like it's overrepresented population, and it's just a few people, and it doesn't matter. None of it matters. The work matters. It's, and as Tracy was just talking, it reminds me of something I used to say to my students when I used to teach high school, and I remember myself how stressful high school can be, and we all do. And you think that what people think about you and who's cool and what the gossip is, it destroy your life, right? It really does destroy people's lives. And I remember saying to my students, like, who was the coolest in 5th grade? You never remember. You don't remember. It doesn't matter. And even if you do remember, it doesn't matter. Where are you now? What did you make that lasts through 4 seasons, that lasts through weather and storms and over epochs? What's real? You can't fight with the internet. It's amorphous. It's a blob, right? It's not tactile. You can't touch it or feel it. It's not real. We're in an interesting age of a collision of cultures, right? The sacred space of the theater that's existed since time immemorial, and social media, camera, phone, gossip, chat, get your 15 seconds, get somebody clickbait stuff. These two worlds are colliding, and, theater's got to hold its ground. We got to demand to continue to be a sacred space, and we're not playing that here in terms of the kind of invasion stuff, right? We have to hold our ground, or else this stuff is a virus that takes over.
Just to echo what everyone said, focus on your work, focus on your truth. If it's something that you believe in, the creative team believes in, the cast believes in, then you move forward with that.
Would all of you want to try on each other's hats? So Sutton and Jesse, would you like to write or direct? Tracy, would you ever do a musical? Camille and Michael, would you want to go back into performing and acting? Just curious.
Well, I still perform, so I just haven't. I've just never done it in the theater world. There's like concert dance and theater, so I've really had a performing career in concert dance. I would love to be on stage in theater. I don't know if people would want to see me do that on stage, but so yeah.
I never want to be in charge of anything. So no to like directing. But I do enjoy performing, and I would like to do that. I mean, I'm not, no one, please don't cast me in anything. But like, I like performing. Like, I would do that.
I'd pay to see it.
I'm a pretty good actress.
Directing, certainly for me. I mean, I've done some directing in TV and film, and it's probably the place I feel the most like myself, and not I feel the least imposter syndrome in that space. So that will continue to be part of my future, and I would think, I'd hope.